they got this idea of turning it into a black resort because the blacks had nowhere to go. The Branches were very religious people, very religious. You probably know that. And so they went to Baldwin and said, we have this idea. What would you think of inviting the blacks to have a resort here? And they okayed it.
My family first came to Idlewild in 1932. At that time, my father was the first black state senator in Michigan. And we came up here as soon as school was out. We'd come up here in the summertime. And we would stay 3 months and then go back to school in Detroit. Well, it was publicized in the Chicago Defender by Leela Wilson, one of the founders of Idlewild, that if you would come to Idlewild, she would give you a lot. And a lot of people migrated, mostly, they migrated from Chicago more than any other. And when they got up here, they found out it wasn't farmland, it was mostly sand. A lot of them went back, some of them did stay. And that's when the resort started. And that's when Mr. Branch and his brothers came in and started plotting out lots. And lots were sold too by him.
I've learned it from interviewing people that Woodland Park was first founded by a man named Marion Arthur and his wife Ella. And they both had been instrumental or working with the Idlewild Resort Company in Idlewild. And they had been, he in fact had been a salesman for them, had been one of their chief salesmen, as I understood. And that as the property in Idlewild was becoming scarce, that Mr. Arthur went looking for property that he could emulate Idlewild, and that's when he founded Woodland Park.
There was a lady by the name of Dorsey that I don't know if my folks knew this lady personally or my mother just happened to meet her somewhere, but she was telling her, my mother, that about this summer resort in Woodland Park that catered more or less to black people. And at that time, it was rather unusual because there weren't too many places for black people to go. And when my mother told my dad about it, he was so excited that there was some place really that they could go and relax and vacation like other people did. So they made plans to come to Woodland Park.
They had little booklets like this with pictures of the hotel and all that they used for publicity. Had postcards that they used to send out giving the rates at the hotel.
One thing that I have learned is that Ella Arthur was a master at marketing. That anytime, and you see any of the pictures that we have, most of these pictures were actually postcards. And what she would do is anytime somebody caught a big fish, anytime somebody built a house, anytime somebody did something monumental, Mrs. Arthur would take a picture of it and have it made into a postcard. So then when that person sent the postcard, or when anybody who came bought the postcard or got the postcard and sent it across the country, then other African Americans saw what these African Americans were doing in northern Michigan. And that's what created the whole fervor. You look at some of the things, I mean, even today, when I look at some of these things that, these advertisements that we have gotten, most of them are prior to 1940. It makes you proud to think that, the way that they knew how to market. And it, again, like I mentioned before, they used catchy phrases. They knew how to touch the hearts or the feelings that were generated through the Negro communities then. Own your own land, be your own landlord, own something that nobody can take away from you. Those are they captured the feeling that was happening in our communities then.
My grandfather, Charles W. Chestnut, had a court reporting agency in Cleveland, Ohio. And since the courts were not in operation in the summer, he was free to travel and come up here. My grandmother liked it up here very much, and that, I think, was an incentive for him to build.
This was basically an area at that particular time wasn't attractive to whites. There were other areas in the further north, 70 or 80 miles in the Traverse City area, that where that you had places that individuals, industrialists, and people that was coming in from Chicago and various places, they were building and settling there.
No matter where you lived in the park, that's what we call Woodland Park, the park. No matter where you lived in the park, if you were a teenager, you headed for the porch on the Royal Breeze Hotel. And all the youngsters, I could remember my children saying the same thing to me. A flashlight was necessary because all the kids traversed the roads at night walking with their lights, and you could be looking and you would see just lights bobbing up and down the road, and it would be a bunch of kids going home at night from having been to the hotel.
Williams Island across the lake was the center of Idlewild, and it was built up. Now it's not. On that island there was the clubhouse, which was a large structure at this end, at the east end, and they served meals there, and they would have music and dancing and public meetings and things. It was a gathering place. But also on the island there was a store which also included a gas station. There was one pump, and they had groceries and ice, and the post office, the summer post office, was also included in there. It was run by a family named Elsner. And there was also, in the middle of the island, a barber shop for the summer run by a man named Day, D-A-Y. And then at the other end of the island, at the west end of the island, there was a 3-story hotel. I don't know how many rooms it had in it, but they were single rooms for visitors. And then on the back side of the island, there were individual small cabins, which people, tourists, visitors could also rent if they didn't want to stay in the hotel. And then also at the west end of the island was a nightclub called the Purple Palace. And all of these things were in full swing during the summer, see, and people would gather there. The weekends, the nightclub would do best on the weekend, and people would row across the lake. In the 20s, there were not a great many cars. People walked, and you would walk around on the road with your flashlight and to do or attend something on the island, and then you would walk back.
Somewhere around probably the late 20s or early 30s, Mattie Keller and Ella Towns came to Woodland Park. And as I'm enamored with Marion Arthur and his wife Ella, I'm also enamored with them. They were two sisters, and who, as I have been told, came from all the way from the South in a taxi. And but the minute that they came here to Woodland Park, and the rumor has it that they brought a suitcase full of money, and they probably did, because it seems like from the day, well, you know, when you look back from here, looking back, things seem to happen so fast. But when I think about the things that they did, they built the first store in Woodland Park. It was, they called it the Woodland Park Coffee Shop and Oil Station. And then on the same corner as our store today, I don't know how long they kept it, but then they expanded that into a store, a grocery store. Then they expanded even that. They also built one of the maybe second or third hotels here, very elegant, huge building, humongous building that they called the Kelsonia Inn. Excuse me, the Kelsonia Ranch. And I understand they had dances there. And for some reason, they decided that they didn't want it there anymore, that there was some property that was close to the lake. And they had that building torn down, and the lumber they used to build the building that's still standing today called the Kelsonia Inn.
Well, I remember coming to Idlewild to see the Heidi Heidi Ho Man in about 1942. And my next trip was to see Dinah Washington at Paradise Club. The wonderful entertainers, the entertainment, I didn't think of it as living here or anything. It was something so different to, you know, the only chance I'd ever have to see the big entertainers was to come here.
I think they had choices. I don't know if you'd say it's outgrowing a place. You just have so many other choices. And it's just like we are today. You might go, you might decide, you know, you might be able to afford to go to Hawaii every year, but then you might learn, well, I think maybe I might want to go to the Caribbean. I have a choice, you know, Hawaii is beautiful, but I think I'll choose to go to the Caribbean this year. You know, I think it's very much the same.
People made money at that time, yeah, but we weren't foresighted. We never thought the day would come along when integration would be gone. They sent men up here from Detroit Free Press, Detroit Times, interviewing me. What happened, Sonny? I said, integration. They jump. Integration is beautiful. I said, yeah, not for black business. And they didn't leave us because it was black or white. They blacked that because we weren't competitive. 1970, I can remember this as clear as a bell. The bottom fell out, just like, boom, it's all over. My business dropped half.
It shows one of the things that we had to struggle so hard for, just like struggling to get to sit on the bus in the right place. We had to struggle for Idlewild because we couldn't go anyplace else. It's one of our accomplishments.
So it's a place where you feel comfortable, where the neighbors that you've gotten to know are like members of your own family, and that people would say at the end of a summer, God willing, we'll see you again next year.
When you're tired of the city's toil and strife, pack your grip, take children and wife. Hop a train that's bound for the royal breeze, just a place to rest, the crowd agrees. Here you meet your friends far and near, joy and laughter brighten days most drear. Not a chance to mope over moments sad. Come to Woodland Park and be made glad. Glad that life is coursing your veins. Glad you found a place where God reigns. Glad that there's hope and faith among your race. Glad to meet your brother face to face.